2. Great. Good afternoon. I'm glad that we have a microphone for those who rely on spoken language. I will be using International Sign to chair this session. My name is Dr. Joe Murray. I am the president of the World Federation of the Deaf. It is my honor to chair this side event. Let me begin with a statement that the WFD makes everywhere we go. The right to sign is a fundamental human right. Sign languages are full, natural human languages, equal in every respect to spoken languages. For a deaf person, access to a national sign language is not a convenience. It is the foundation of education, participation, identity, and nearly every other right this convention promises. We meet around 2 anniversaries. This year, the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities turns 20. And this year, Malta marks 10 years since it passed the Maltese Sign Language Recognition Act. Read side by side, they show us how a right travels from words on a page into the daily life of a deaf person. When the CRPD was adopted 20 years ago, it became the first human rights treaty to name sign languages directly. It defines language to include sign languages. It guarantees the right to express yourself in sign language and calls on states parties to recognize it in law. It protects education delivered in sign language. And it affirms the right of deaf people to their own cultural and linguistic identity. That is the promise, now the reality. 20 years on, around 6 in 10 of the states parties that have ratified this convention have still not legally recognized their national sign language. The WFD has been clear that the absence of meaningful sign language is a grave violation of deaf people's fundamental rights. This is why Malta matters to all of us and why we are not only celebrating today. Malta is a small nation with a minority sign language that chose to seat deaf people at the table as decision makers. Small states are often told that recognition is something they will get to later, when resources allow. But Malta shows the opposite. When a nation understands inclusion means meaningful recognition of sign language, they show everyone else what is possible. As we start this event, I want to go over a few practical details. We have international sign interpretation and live captioning available today. And you can see that on the screen, I believe, at one point. I would like to begin by it is my pleasure to invite Her Excellency Ambassador Natasha. Ambassador Natasha Melli, Permanent Representative of the Republic of Malta to the United Nations, to address us.
Technology is not with us today. We can give it another try. Hello? Yeah? Is this working? Is it? So, technology issues seem to have been solved. It happens from time to time. Once again, Mr. Chair, I wish to thank you for this introduction and to say that it is a great honor for me to be here today to mark the 10 years of Maltese Sign Language as well as the 20 years of the CRPD. Colleagues, friends, the past years have seen trying times. We have witnessed unprecedented shifts which threaten to leave behind those persons which society has placed in situations of increased vulnerability. However, through meetings such as the COSP, we gather together to affirm our commitment to the principle of nothing without us, and to recognize the achievements have been made possible through our joint action, and indeed to pledge to continue building upon past successes while addressing emerging challenges together. Today, we proudly recall a landmark achievement from my own country, Malta, as has been mentioned. A testament to what targeted advocacy and collaborative stakeholder engagement can achieve. It is the story of a small community, as has been mentioned, within a very small nation, but one that fought for over 50 years and that until just 14 years ago was still denied the fundamental right to exercise legal capacity. Today, Malta's deaf community has brought us together to celebrate this achievement. The 10 years since Maltese Sign Language became an official language and since the Maltese Sign Language Council was established. This council was established to formally oversee the protection and promotion of deaf rights and culture, to work on university level courses, providing training to sign language interpreters, and to put in place a cutting-edge framework, providing for registration and warranting of sign language interpreters, elevating this profession to the standard it deserves, while guaranteeing quality in service delivery for the deaf community. While our council colleagues will be sharing further details of this journey with you, it is important to recognize one key aspect. None of this would have been possible without coordination at national level, as well as the support and example of partners abroad. Partners who we are also glad to have with us here today. So with that, colleagues, Mr. Chair, I wish to thank you all for making this happen. Not only for today's event, but for your continued efforts over the years. And in the face of adversity, you have affirmed diversity and equity, promoted inclusion, and stayed true to the values of the CRPD, which we want to see stronger than ever 20 years on from its adoption. Thank you once again for being with us here today.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your very wonderful words to open. I am pleased now to hand the floor to the ambassador from the permanent mission of Mongolia, Akbayar Namjorj.
Chair, colleagues, excellencies, distinguished delegates, representatives of the organizations of persons with disabilities. Thank you for having us, first of all. And languages are not merely a tool for communication. It is the foundation of the identity, participation, and dignity. That's why this anniversary really matters, not only Malta and Mongolia and the deaf community, but for all of us committed to the full realization of the CRPD. Today we mark two milestones that remind us how far we have come and how much further we must go. I extend my appreciation to Malta and all co-sponsors for bringing together the governments, international organizations, and representatives of the deaf community to advance our shared commitment to the objectives of the Convention on the Rights of the Persons with Disabilities. The recognition and promotion of sign languages are also not merely matters of accessibility. They are fundamental to the realization of human rights, dignity, inclusion, and equal participation. Sign languages are vital means of communication and an essential element of the linguistic identity, culture, and participation of deaf communities. As emphasized by the CRPD, persons with disabilities must be empowered to participate fully and then effectively in society, and languages at the heart of that participation. Mongolia strongly supports efforts to ensure the accessibility and full inclusion of persons with disabilities in decision-making processes. Mongolia's law on the rights of persons with disabilities, adopted in 2016, recognizes sign language as an important means of communication and promotes measures to support its use and development. While Mongolia does not have yet a dedicated law on the sign language, work has commenced on development of initial draft legislative framework, reflecting our commitment to further strengthen the protection and promotion of the linguistic rights of deaf persons. As a state party to the CRPD, Mongolia has continued to strengthen its legislative and policy framework to promote the rights of the persons with disabilities, including measures related to accessibility, inclusive education, employment opportunities, independent living, and participation in public life. Mongolia firmly believes that the organizations of persons with disabilities, including organizations of deaf persons, must participate meaningfully in the development, implementation, and monitoring and the evaluation of policies and programs that affect them. Their leadership and lived experience are indispensable to the effective implementation of the commitment. The Malta's enactment of the Maltese Sign Language Recognition Act in 2016 and its subsequent framework for regulating sign language interprets stands as a model of deaf-led, rights-based policymaking that many states, including Mongolia, can learn from. We commend Malta's achievements over the past decades and are grateful for the opportunity to engage with good practice shared today. As we mark the 20 years of the CRPD, let this anniversary remind us that conclusion begins with language, and deaf communities must be not just beneficiaries of our policies, but they architects. And 2 days ago, I was sitting in the opening of the plenary, and then I just reminded myself that when we ratified the convention itself, I was translating the convention into Mongolian so that the parliament can adopt into the convention. Then subsequently, as I said, we adopted the specific law on matter in 2016. Now, when it comes to the full implementation of the legal framework we have, is that scalable financing, hard infrastructure, and so on. We have done a lot, but there are more things we have to done together. And then I wish today's side event very productive and successful one. With that, thank you very much. Sorry for saying few things rather than prepare a text.
Thank you very much. I think the key point is that language is a universal human right, and that can be spoken language or sign language. So thank you very much for emphasizing that. Next, we'd like to have the Member of the European Parliament, Alex Agius-Saliba, who is the co-chair for the Disability Intergroup of the European Parliament. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Chair, dearest Ambassador, and also representatives of deaf organizations. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today to mark two very important anniversaries, two very important milestones when it comes to recognizing the rights of persons with disabilities. First of all, the 20th anniversary of the Convention for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which is the living document, I like to say, when it comes to protecting the most basic and fundamental rights of persons with disability. But as a Maltese, I feel truly honored to be here also today to mark the 10-year anniversary since Maltese Sign Language received legal and official recognition, something which I believe continues to enrich our cultural heritage as Maltese. And we are here today, and this is more special for me because we are not going to speak only about legislation or policy, but we are putting people, a minority, at the very center stage of our discussion. And maybe for us, Maltese minorities take a more important position, maybe because of our small size, geographical limitations. Therefore, we always try to give center stage to our minorities. And the deaf community in Malta, I believe, is a very important community, and having their language, which is not just a tool, it's a language, it's a fundamental right, as we have already stated is a very important message that we gave as a community, as a member state 10 years ago. Again, this was an important legal step, but more importantly, it was also a recognition of a fundamental right, a recognition also of a long fight that the Maltese deaf community has been pushing forward, because ultimately Maltese Sign Language is not just a tool for communication, it is a language. It is culture, it is identity, and also, as I said, a vital part of our national heritage. And what makes me especially proud is that this story did not only end with a law being passed. Over the last decade, deaf people in Malta have been given a center stage, together with interpreters, professionals, service providers, and also public authorities. They have helped to shape policies, strengthen services, and also promote greater accessibility. They have shown that real progress happens when people are not only spoken for, but when they are empowered to speak for themselves. And this is also one of the most important lessons that we have learned as CRPD. 20 years ago, the convention continues to remind us that inclusion is not only about doing things for persons with disability. It is about working with persons with disabilities and ensuring that they are equal partners when decisions are being taken, decisions that ultimately are shaping and affecting their daily lives. The experience of Malta shows that even a small country can make a meaningful impact, a meaningful contribution. We do not claim to have all the answers at hand, and there is still much to do, but we are proud to share our experience and also to learn from experiences of deaf communities throughout the world. Because while sign languages may differ from one country to another, the value which is enshrined in the sign language that we are discussing today is a universal value, a value of dignity, a value of participation, and a value of respect. And apart from being Maltese, I'm also proud to come from a very special committee within the European Parliament. Here today for these events, we are represented by 3 different committees coming from the European Parliament: the Civil Liberties Committee, the Employment and Social Affairs Committee, and also the Petitions Committee. And the Petitions Committee in the European Parliament is the only committee, is the only formation within the European Parliament who also has sign language as an official language. So sign language, apart from all the official languages in the European Parliament, is always given and is always accessible during all our meetings, to make also the work of the only committee where there is interaction between European citizens, the Commission, and we as parliamentarians together with member states more accessible. I would like to thank all those who made this event possible, particularly the deaf community in Malta, whose commitment, whose perseverance brought us where we are today. Because ultimately, having Maltese sign language recognized as an official language is not only the work of the Maltese government, but it is the work of the deaf community in Malta. Therefore, as we celebrate these important milestones today, let us also send a clear message from New York. Recognition matters, accessibility matters, deaf leadership matters. And 20 years after CRPD, we must continue to build societies where deaf people are not asking only for a place on the table, but are helping and are being given center stage to lead the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A wonderful testimony about the impact of the Maltese Sign Language and its, how it interacts with other language rights around the world and deaf communities. Next in this session, we will have 3 thematic interventions. The first theme is the road to empowerment. Where do we stand? The first speaker will be Annabelle Sherry, chairperson of the Maltese Sign Language Association.
Yes. Dear Chair, distinguished delegates and friends, as well as those watching us online. 10 years ago, I stood in the Maltese Parliament to watch Maltese Sign Language past 10 years. I've seen the successes myself as well as for my community. But challenges remain. We need more sign language teachers so that deaf children can learn their language early on. It becomes a natural language. And we also need more interpreters so that we have more access to every area of life. I dream of a future where everyone has access, and this access is automatic, not needing to have to fight for it every time to gain access. This access needs to become part of our lives. These challenges don't mean that they'll all fade, but it just shows what we need to do next. In order for people who are deaf to have a better life, we need to work together and leave no one behind. Malta is a small island, but we have achieved a lot already. We are strong. We have worked together with the deaf community, interpreters, families, and also government authorities. I hope to see in the next 10 years more achievements, working together, promoting and celebrating together, so that sign language and our identity as deaf people in Malta continues to grow together for more success. To conclude, I would like to say something really simple. It is important for us to remember, as deaf persons, as authorities, that for real inclusion to happen, it is really important for deaf people not to just be part of the conversation, but to lead the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think the last sentence that you said, that we need to be leading, is completely true. For our next speaker, we will have the Executive Director of the Cultural Center for the Deaf in Mongolia, Dulam Surin Chijit, and is also a close friend with the World Federation of the Deaf. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And hello, greetings to everyone. Thank you for having me here. Let me begin by congratulating everyone on two meaningful anniversaries, the 20th anniversary of UN CRPD and the 10th anniversary of the recognition of Maltese Sign Language. Now, these are not an official recognition, but I want to say, as our ambassador of Mongolia, we have laws and they are in place, but I want to speak to my personal experience. In Mongolia, the situation is that we are the biggest, or the 18th largest landmass country in the world. However, our population is very small. We are a country of 3.5 million people. We are nomadic people, and so we have traditionally had isolated tribes throughout our landmass, massively so as our country is comprised. Now we have 8,000 deaf people, and that statistics includes deaf people, hard of hearing people, people with hearing loss, those who speak and don't sign, so we don't have an official statistic on how many Mongolians use sign language as their primary language. Prior to the CRPD being adopted and ratified, I did not have access to sign language as well. I have a shared experience to Annabelle's life in Malta. I was born in a remote area. I became deaf at 8 years old. I did not have any peers who were deaf in my community. I knew that there was one university where deaf students could enroll in the capital, but deaf people sign in public. We have sign language comfortably used in our community and beyond our community as well. This is a positive change. However, it's been a slow change. It's required changes in attitude, improvement in education, but we are not at the level where we have sign language recognition in law. However, the deaf community is working with our government to fight for the recognition of sign language. It's a positive process. It's a long process, but we're making progress. Part of the issue is that we don't have the experience required to work together simply because we are a country of nomads. We have to ask ourselves, if we do get national recognition of our sign language, how would that work look? Who would be responsible for what, and who would pay for what? I'm hoping in the next 20 years to see change like the recognition of Mongolian Sign Language, because in the UN's CRPD, we do have the right to recognize our own national sign language. We don't have that yet, and when we do, we will have more access to a full life, as mentioned in the Maltese experience, but implementation is the challenge. So we have work ahead of us. For example, for reasonable accommodations, this is something that deaf people in Mongolia have not necessarily achieved in the way that we would like. It's not synonymous with access, and we hope to see that achieved in the next 20 years. With Article 12 of the UN CRPD, this speaks to equality in the legal system, equality before the law. This is not a new concept to all of us, and this is part of human rights, as we all know. But the question is, what does access look like in that space? And so we need to make that happen. We can see in Mongolia that is not being realized by many deaf Mongolians, and not just in Mongolia. In response to Annabelle's comments, with law, a national law, with the UN CRPD, there can be support for national recognition of Mongolian Sign Language, but we do have barriers. Of course, at the international level, we recognize that sign language is a right and that there can be implementation of that process, but we face attitudinal barriers. And we also face a lack of employment opportunities, reasonable accommodations to employment. It's also not clear who does what in this system. However, at the international level, I do have some of the access that I hope to see in my own country. We can see that Malta has achieved national recognition. We're talking about it on an international level. And I hope to see that in Mongolia soon. I hope to see that our national sign language gets recognized and we have the work ahead of us. And I want to see it specifically in my field of work in arts and culture. I am somebody who works in theater. I want access to do the work I'm talented to do, and I hope to get that access one day. Thank you for listening to my experience. Maybe I can learn from the Maltese deaf community. We can collaborate together and work to achieve this recognition. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Murray, as well.
Thank you so much for your sharing your experience and for your look into the future of deaf rights in Mongolia. Our next thematic section will be strengthening regulation, services, and support. Again, we will have two speakers. The first speaker is Leanne Quigley from Ireland, the chairperson of the board of the Irish Deaf Society, among other responsibilities. She has sent a video for us, and she's not able to be here with us today. If we could show the video, please.
Risley, and I am the chairperson of the Irish Deaf Society. I would like to thank the Maltese Sign Language Council for inviting me here today to talk about Ireland's system for the regulation of Irish Sign Language interpreters. The recognition of Irish Sign Language, ISL, has been achieved through the ISL Act 2017. That was a landmark moment for deaf rights in Ireland. An important key element of this was the establishment of the Register of Irish Sign Language Interpreters, known as RISLI. The purpose of RISLI was to create a system to verify interpreter competence and to support quality assurance in interpreting services. For deaf people, this is not simply an administrative issue. Access to qualified interpreters directly impacts our rights to healthcare, education, justice, employment, political participation and independent living. However, significant challenges remain. In 2024, RISLI received legal advice indicating that its mandate under the ISL Act is limited strictly to accrediting interpreter competence. As a result, the Code of Conduct was withdrawn, the complaint process was ceased, and structured continuous professional development was no longer a requirement. This has created a serious gap that negatively impacts deaf people. Interpreters listed on the register are currently not bound by a statutory code of conduct, and deaf people have no independent complaints mechanism through RISLI if issues arise regarding confidentiality, professionalism, or quality of interpretation. The Irish Deaf Society has been actively campaigning to address these issues and strengthen the interpreter regulation system in Ireland through a rights-based approach. IDS has raised these concerns in its list of issues submission. These submissions are to government and through direct engagement with policymakers. Most recently, in our submission to the National Disability Authority on the second review of the ISL Act, the idea called for it to be amended to explicitly provide RISLI with legal authority for regulatory functions, including professional standards, complaints procedures, and the enforcement of continuous professional development. The IDS has also called for a clear policy and funding responsibility for RISLI to sit with the Department of Children, Disability and Equality to ensure governance is grounded in a human rights and equality framework rather than a welfare-based approach. Importantly, IDS supports the introduction of a statutory code of conduct for interpreters, an independent complaints mechanism approved by the Minister, and structured state-funded continuous professional development, particularly in specialised areas such as health, legal and education. IDS representatives sit on the Irish Sign Language Working Group under Ireland's National Human Rights Strategy for Disabled People. One of the key policy priorities of this group is to strengthen the pipeline of interpreters to address the critical shortage and ensure sustainable access to high-quality interpretation services into the future. For deaf people, interpreter regulation is fundamentally about human rights. Recognition of ISL alone is not enough. Deaf communities must also have confidence that interpreting services are safe, regulated and supported through sustained investment. Ireland has made important progress, but there's still significant work to be done to ensure that deaf people can fully realise their rights under the NRCPD. Thank you.
from Malta who will be speaking together. Dorian Callis, who is a member of the Maltese Sign Language Association, and Sharon Mifsud, the president of AILSM. The floor is yours.
My name is Dorian Callis, and I'm a board member of the Maltese Sign Language Council. I really would like to thank you all for today's opportunity, and in my brief time, I will explain the services, the support, and the systems we have in place in Malta on behalf of the deaf people. The year 2000 was a crucial year for us because Equal Opportunities Act started being enacted in Malta. This happened before the CRPD, but we were already working towards inclusion, equity, and participation. The law of the CRPD has further empowered us and has greatly helped us to develop legislations, policies, and services, all for the benefit of disabled people. The Equal Opportunities Act in the year 2000 started providing us also with the services of sign language interpreters, as well as services on national television. Initially, the service was very poor. However, we are now proud to say that it is being increasing gradually. The newscasting is that of a 10-minute bulletin, but it still gives deaf people accessibility just as other people in Malta. I am very proud with the service we are giving, and especially that it has been going on for more than 25 years. The television programs in Malta are still very limited with accessibility. However, many political events are accessible. They have interpretation with Maltese Sign Language, and others have subtitles. We really hope to keep on increasing these services to also include not only deaf people, but those with hard of hearing. In Malta, we also work to achieve courses through lifelong learning by teaching basic Maltese Sign Language. These courses serve as an awareness and the first step for people to gain the opportunity to learn sign language. Awareness is fundamental for inclusion, and this also helps us increase the services we need. The demand is increasing, and in fact, now at the University of Malta, there's a course running for deaf teachers. Recently also, there's a new service in Malta from Agencia Support. It's for the deaf and hard of hearing people. It provides supports to individuals and their families within the community. They also provide education and help to people who need guidance and to need tips on how best to communicate. These things and achievements show that Malta has steadily grown with support and a system in place. However, more work needs to be done collaboratively, so we ensure equality, opportunity, most crucial things. I just need to add some thoughts. In my perspective as an interpreter, I am used to be in the middle between languages and between cultures. I see that there was always a great improvement because we were collaboratively together. When I was studying way back at university for my first degree, I met the deaf people who voluntarily started to teach me basic sign language and welcomed me in their deaf community. This year was the year 2006. Little did I know that that year was such an important milestone for the UN CRPD. You know, that's why we're here today. As time went by, I kept on learning sign language, and then an opportunity came up for me to work as an interpreter with the Deaf People Association of Malta. That meant that the Deaf Association had trusted me and wanted me to take responsibility. I have always worked collaboratively and very proudly with my colleagues and with deaf people. We knocked doors together, we lobbied together, and we really fought hard for deaf rights. You know, in Malta we really have a small number of interpreters, but we still work very professionally and keep up with professional development. We learn from practices from abroad. The convention is also helpful for us to recognize accessibility, to increase services, and to work to improve professional standards of interpreting. But most importantly is that we keep on developing and improving. Malta has also our own law, which we are very proud of, because this happened in 2016, 10 years ago. And this law is showing how important accessibility is. In fact, the Council oversees the law. This law helps us as well to work furthermore so that we can start working on the official sign language interpreting course. This was a postgraduate diploma at the University of Malta, where interpreters graduated officially for the first time. The Interpreters Association, together with the Sign Language Council and the Deaf Association, have celebrated and achieved these things all together. And recently, just in 2025, we have a new law of the registration and monitoring for the professional sign language interpreters. This ensures a professional standard for us interpreters, but a high quality service for deaf people. I would really like to thank all the people who support us, and as the president of the Association of Interpreters, I really would like to thank you and say how proud we are that we work together. Together we work and together we celebrate. I think it's very important that as a small nation, we appreciate what we do and we really need to be grateful. To conclude, I am just quoting Helen Keller, who said, alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for your attention.
Thank you to our two speakers. I think it's important to say that as
national associations of deaf people across European countries. It is an honor to join you at this side event marking the 20th anniversary of the CRPD. 20 years on, I want to speak plainly about where the European Union stands on sign language rights and what still needs to change. Now, the convention is not silent on sign languages. Articles 2, 21B and E, and 30, read together, establish a clear obligation. States parties must recognize and promote the use of national sign languages in all areas of public life. The EUD's position is that these provisions, taken together, create an obligation to officialize national sign languages, not merely to just acknowledge their existence, but to give them formal legal status. The European Union has ratified the CRPD on the 23rd of December in 2010. It is therefore bound by these obligations, and yet none of the 29 national sign languages used across the EU member states are recognized as official languages of the European Union. In 2025, the CRPD committee issued its concluding observations to the European Union. And for the first time, the committee explicitly recommended that the EU proceed with the officialization of national sign languages as official EU languages. This recommendation is not isolated. The UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities made the same call in 2021. And in 2026, the Special Rapporteur on Minority Issues joined this growing consensus, recognizing deaf communities not only as persons with disabilities, but as cultural and linguistic minorities whose languages deserve protection and promotion. There are various mechanisms of the United Nations are speaking with one voice. The European Union must listen. We had hoped that the European Commission's recent communication that updated the European Disability Rights Strategy to 2020-30 would reflect this consensus. However, it does not. There's no mention of the officialization of national sign languages, no initiative to strengthen sign language rights across the Union. So the linguistic rights of approximately 1 million deaf sign language users in the EU remain largely invisible in the Commission's agenda. This is a significant failing, and EUD deplores it. The EUD is not waiting. We are acting. We've been at the forefront of advocating for a European Day of Sign Languages to be held every year on June 17th. In October of last year, the Council of the European Union in its EPSCO formation endorsed this initiative. This is a meaningful step forward. However, the European Commission has yet to advance on this matter. A European Day of Sign Languages requires an institutional anchor, a decision, a legal act, a commitment. Without Commission leadership, political endorsement risks becoming symbolic. That is why the EUD is now working closely with the European Parliament to make this day a reality. We believe that parliamentary leadership combined with civil society advocacy can build the pressure needed to compel action. 20 years of the CRPD represent 20 years of progress. But progress is not enough when the gap between what is required and what is done remains this wide. The EUD calls on the European Commission to align its disability rights strategy with human rights obligations and to take concrete steps towards the officialization of national sign languages. The CRPD committee has spoken, the special rapporteurs have spoken, and it's time for the European Union to act. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia, for your comments with us. For our final speaker, we have Elizabeth Lockwood from CBN Global resolution, a representative to the United Nations. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here and to be representing my organization. I'm going to talk today about the importance of international cooperation, especially international NGOs working with deaf communities. As background, CBM Global is an international NGO, and we work with persons with disabilities in Africa, Asia, the Pacific, and Latin America. We work with deaf communities in Bolivia, Laos, Madagascar, Nigeria, Papua New Guinea, and the Philippines. And I'll give you a little bit of background on a few of these projects. In Laos, we work with the Laotian deaf community to promote the rights of deaf people to access Laotian Sign Language. And it's very important because this project also supports the recognition of Laotian Sign Language, to be officially recognized. We also work in Madagascar, and Madagascar has been very important to us. We have worked with deaf learners for more than 40 years. We also have a memorandum of understanding with the Malagasy Sign Language interpreters. So we ensure that sign language is in all our programs and events and anything that we do. Even communications, very, very important. In the Philippines, another important factor is in our country advisory panel, we have the Deaf Federation President as one of our members. And I think this is really important to highlight, to have deaf leaders from the deaf community involved in international NGO work. We also support the recent initiative sharing Filipino Sign Language evidence and outcomes from the Filipino deaf community. And although our contributions are small, they have a very big impact. We also are supporting the Filipino Sign Language Act of 2018, and similarly to what Duya mentioned, Filipino Sign Language is recognized, but it's not really being implemented. So we're supporting this process with the community. And very important, the project takes a participatory approach, and deaf individuals are not just participants, they're the leaders and the co-creators of these projects. And then, of course, something I'm very proud of as CBM Global, we have a memorandum of understanding with the World Federation of the Deaf. And this was signed in 2022. And one of the things we have done is supported deaf-led research for deaf women in Nigeria, accessing healthcare services, and also deaf indigenous women in Bolivia, so replicating this study, very, very important. So I will conclude as saying that the benefits of an international NGO working with deaf organizations in this partnership can really highlight a few things, such as strengthening the commitment to and development toward deaf rights, ensuring the full realization of human rights of all deaf people, and this includes linguistic and cultural rights, and especially the recognition of national sign languages, supporting deaf organizations to lead the systemic change that's envisioned under the Convention and the Sustainable Development Goals, funding deaf-led research to fill critical data gaps, especially on sign language users and underrepresented deaf groups, and supporting inclusive international cooperation to support the realization of the rights of deaf persons in the Global South. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our time has run out for questions, unfortunately. So we will have to move on to one of our final segments, which is a celebration of Maltese Sign Language performance of sorts. This celebration will be through visual art forms, what is called visual vernacular. It's impossible to be interpreted into spoken language. So we ask that you watch the performance, and then we will give an explanation of the performance afterward.
getting the camera. Wonderful. That's great. Thank you.
the chair rightly explained, and I will briefly explain what that entailed. It was the struggle towards the recognition and celebration of our national Maltese Sign Language. So now we will hope you enjoy and appreciate all the work that has been done before us, and I would like to thank the Council and all the people who supported us to be where we are today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can I have the camera toward the chair, please? Thank you for that beautiful performance. I think the symbolism of that performance was a wonderful way of summarizing the panel that we've been able to enjoy today at this side event. The struggle for sign language recognition is one that many of us have experienced and one that we feel connected with. It is one that connects our community in many ways. And so I think your performance showed the exhilaration that can be felt when sign languages are recognized. And I think it's up to us after this week here at COSP, as we go back